70,000 years ago, humans were just one more ape wandering the savannah, weaker than a chimp and scared of lions. Today we run the whole planet, and in Sapiens, historian Yuval Noah Harari asks the obvious question: what actually happened? By the end of this video, you'll understand the four giant leaps: imagination, farming, money and empires, and science, that turned a fragile animal into the master of Earth, and why that mastery came with a very strange price tag. About 70,000 years ago, something rewired the sapiens' brain, and suddenly we could talk about things that don't exist at all, like gods, nations, money, even the idea of fairness. Harari calls this the cognitive revolution, and it started small. Language let people gossip, track who's trustworthy and who's a cheat, which kept tight little tribes running smoothly. But the real superpower was fiction. A chimpanzee can only cooperate with the buddies it personally knows and grooms, capping troops at around 50 or 150 individuals, tops. Humans blew past that ceiling because we could all buy into the same made-up story, like a tribe, a religion, or a flag, and total strangers would suddenly trust each other and work as one. Picture two sapiens who've never met, both showing up to build a canoe together simply because they both believe in the same imaginary chief. That's a trick no chimp could ever pull off. That's the whole secret weapon. Not muscles, not claws, but collectively believable make-believe. Before farms existed, our ancestors spent tens of thousands of years as hunter-gatherers, and Harari argues this lifestyle was, in many ways, pretty good. A forager band might only need a few hours a day to find food, leaving plenty of time to rest, socialize, and explore. And because they ate dozens of different plants and animals depending on the season, they were often healthier and better nourished than farmers who came later. These weren't dumb brutes either. Surviving meant memorizing which mushroom kills you, which roots need boiling, and how to track a wounded deer for miles. An enormous amount of practical knowledge packed into one skull. Meanwhile, as sapiens spread out of Africa, we ran into cousin species like the Neanderthals in Europe, and within a few thousand years of contact, every single one of them vanished. Harari doesn't shy away from the ugly implication. Our species' rise to the top may have started with the extinction of every other kind of human on Earth. Imagine walking into a neighborhood where several other families already live, and within a couple of generations, you're the only family left. That's roughly the scale of what happened. Around 12,000 years ago, sapiens started planting wheat, and Harari calls this one of the biggest gambles in history, because farming didn't actually make our lives better. He flips the story on its head. Instead of humans domesticating wheat, you could just as easily say wheat domesticated humans, tricking us into bending our backs, clearing forests, and hauling water just to keep it happy and spreading across the globe. Farmers actually worked longer hours than foragers, ate a narrower, starchier diet, and got shorter and sicker from repetitive strain and malnutrition. All while a single failed harvest could now mean starvation instead of just moving camp. So why did we keep going? Because farming produced surplus food, and surplus meant some people didn't need to farm at all. They could become kings, priests, soldiers, and tax collectors instead. And once that hierarchy existed, ordinary farmers were stuck feeding it. Think of it like a family buying a bigger and bigger house to store more grain. At some point, there's no going back to the simple tent, even though the tent was arguably less stressful. That one-way ratchet is the real story of the agricultural revolution, trading freedom for security, and often not even getting much security in return. Once farming created crowded societies, humanity needed glue strong enough to hold together millions of total strangers. And Harari says three inventions did the job: money, empires, and religion. Money is maybe the cleverest one. A shell, a coin, or a piece of paper is worthless on its own, but if every single person agrees it's valuable, suddenly a Chinese silk merchant and an Arab spice trader who share no language and no gods can still do business because they both trust the same shiny disk. Empires worked similarly, smashing together dozens of ethnic groups under one set of laws, one language, and one ruling story. And while conquest was brutal, it also spread ideas, roads, and trade networks across huge distances. Religion did the same emotional trick, convincing people that a shared moral order came from beyond the human world, which is exactly why total strangers who worship the same God will risk their lives for one another. What ties all three together is that none of them are physically real. You can't find money or an empire or justice under a microscope. They exist purely because enough people agree to act as if they do. And that's Harari's big point. The moment enough people stop believing in one of these shared stories, like a currency or an empire, it can literally evaporate overnight. For most of history, people assumed all the important answers already existed in old scriptures. But around 500 years ago, Europeans made a strange, powerful admission. Maybe we just don't know, and we should go find out. Harari says that humble idea is the seed of modern science, because once you stop pretending to already have the answer, you're free to run experiments, sail to unmapped coastlines, and update your beliefs when the evidence surprises you. This new curiosity didn't happen in a vacuum, though. It got fused with two other forces: ambitious empires hungry for territory and resources, and a fresh financial trick called credit, where investors would hand over money now for a share of profits that might arrive years later. Picture a merchant in Amsterdam funding a risky ship voyage to Asia purely on a promise of future spice profits. That kind of trust in an imagined future is what let expensive expeditions and laboratories actually get built. So science, conquest, and capitalism ended up traveling together. Explorers charted new lands, investors bankrolled the ships, and empires used the resulting knowledge and wealth to expand even further. It's a messy alliance. Brilliant discoveries and brutal colonization often came from the exact same voyage. Then came the Industrial Revolution, and things that used to take generations to change started shifting within a single lifetime. Steam engines and factories replaced human and animal muscle almost overnight, letting a handful of workers produce what used to take entire villages. And this reshuffled how people actually lived day to day. As factories and cities pulled people away from farms, the tight extended family and local community that had supported humans for thousands of years shrank down into small, isolated households, with the state and the market stepping in to provide things like education, healthcare, and elder care instead. Harari points out that this trade wasn't automatically good or bad. It just meant we swapped depending on grandma and the whole village for depending on paychecks and strangers running institutions. To keep this new industrial machine fed, societies also needed people to keep buying things, so consumerism grew into almost a religion of its own, one that promises happiness through the next purchase rather than the next ritual. Picture someone constantly upgrading their phone the moment a slightly better one appears. That endless appetite is exactly the fuel modern economic growth runs on. And that growth itself depends on a very modern act of faith, trusting that tomorrow's economy will be bigger than today's, which is the same imagined order trick from before, just running the whole planet now. So, after all this, more food, more medicine, more comfort than any humans in history, are we actually happier than a hunter-gatherer sitting by a fire 70,000 years ago? Harari's answer is uncomfortably murky. Happiness seems to depend more on relationships and meaning than on raw material progress. So it's entirely possible we've gotten enormously more powerful without getting proportionally happier at all. Meanwhile, the pace of change keeps accelerating, and we're now standing at the edge of biotechnology and genetic engineering that could let us redesign bodies, extend lifespans, or even design our children's traits before birth. That's an almost godlike power, deciding what future life on Earth looks like. And Harari's biggest worry is that we're gaining that power without gaining the wisdom to use it responsibly. Think of a toddler who suddenly gets handed the keys to a spaceship. The capability has arrived way faster than the maturity to steer it wisely. So the book ends not with an answer, but a challenge, a call to seriously ask what kind of future we actually want, and whether we even know what we want to want. So the real story of Sapiens isn't tools or muscles. It's our unmatched ability to invent shared stories, money, nations, and religions, and get millions of strangers to act like they're real. That superpower built farms, empires, and science labs. But Harari's warning is that we now hold civilization-altering power without any guarantee we're wiser or happier for it. If this walk through 70,000 years of human history clicked for you, subscribe for more book breakdowns that make big ideas feel simple.